This is a Dell 1100 and it was built back in 2003. I'm using it today to demonstrate just how useful hardware of that vintage still is today. So what I've got here, it's all original apart from the card bus Wi-Fi card there on the side. Still has the original ATA hard drive that it's booting from at the moment, and that's one of the main reasons why I think I've got such a performance issue when it's booting up. But for the most part, I'm really quite impressed by this computer, and even given its vintage. It was given to me about a year ago as a backup emergency laptop after my own laptop died after a motherboard crisis, but I wasn't able to use it for the particular roles I had for it, so I've kept it on the back burner and I've repurposed it for my daughter who wants to be an author when she grows up. Or at least that's what we've been hearing for a couple of years now. So I thought I would just set this up for her to facilitate that sort of an activity. It's running Windows XP, and I know that's a major drawback on several different levels, but that notwithstanding, you can just see just how snappy whenever all the background services are loaded up, just how responsive and functional it actually is. So I've configured it for her particular use, and she's a Mac user when she's not using the other machines, so I've cobbled together a bit of a series of themes and I guess applications that still emulate that Macintosh functionality. She's also very big on Miraculous Ladybug at the moment, so I just wanted to individualize this so she could understand that this is actually hers, and it's for her to use it as much as possible. Now, that notwithstanding, I just want to point out when the temperature gauge comes online down here, there we go, it's running at 72 degrees centigrade at the moment. So soon after boot up is a bit of a concern, but this is actually a Pentium 4 CPU. It's not one of the modern era mobile, more energy efficient CPUs. And this is something to be quite expected. It does alarm me. I have cleaned out the vents, and I have actually replaced the thermal paste between the heatsink and CPU. But still, it's something that needs careful monitoring, and perhaps it's the only drawback in giving a small child. So you don't want that sort of thing sitting on somebody's lap. So without a proper CPU, a laptop pad for the moment, this is pretty much in quarantine. Okay, that notwithstanding, it's still a pretty functional little machine, and I've got together a series of notes just to, I guess, outline some of the discoveries I've made when using this. So if you've got a similar sort of vintage computer, I've got a couple of tips for you that you might find useful. So the first thing to notice about this is that you can fit in 2 gigabytes of RAM. Now, all the information you'll get officially from the manufacturer and other CPU providers is that it only does 1.5 gigabytes of RAM, but no, it actually fits quite a bit more than that, and I've got a mixed series of RAM sticks in here that have been operating fine and really noticed the difference in performance. As I mentioned earlier, it's an old Pentium 4 desktop type CPU, and although it can be scaled up to maybe a 3 gigahertz, definitely know of people running 2.8, for that increase in processing speed, you've still got to offset the heat issue, and that's still a bit of a drama. That notwithstanding, the most important thing to do with any of refurbishing new old computers that have come into your control, if you like, is to update the BIOS to the latest possible that you can find. That's also true for the drivers. So in this instance, I was able to use the latest Dell BIOS, and utilize the 8 megabyte video RAM for this particular machine, which wasn't available when it was initially produced. So this is a digital flat panel screen, and even after 14 years you can still see it's got an excellent resolution, and it's operating as crisply perhaps as the day that it was manufactured. Now, given the drawbacks with running it under XP at this point in time, is that it's open to all sorts of security problems. Always has been, but even more so now that its support's been discontinued. You can do a couple of registry hacks that will convince Home Office that you're running a point of sale or embedded business XP version, and they're supported up until 2019. And that's one option to try if you are concerned about security. For general processing speed and performance, you can also utilize, I found MSFN, the community, probably the best source of information in one spot about the sorts of tips and tricks you can do to develop your processing speed and cut back on your background services. If you want to go the whole hog within an XP environment, you can actually do an alternative format, and I've had some experience with XP 98 Lite back in the past, but and it's certainly something that I would have considered had I not got the sort of performance boosts by just doing the performance tweaks suggested from MSFN. Personalization is really easy too within XP. It was really nice to get back into that environment and have a play around with it. Oh, there we go. I've actually disengaged or stopped update notifications. Wouldn't you know? Okay, so this is running a LeopardX type theme that I found online, freely available. There's a couple of other third-party applications you can add as well. It'll give you that full Macintosh type of experience if that's the way you wanted to go. But I've got two additional extras here: Rocket Dock at the top and Object Dock down the bottom, which are additions that I find really quite useful. I wish I had those when I was back in the days when I was in XP. Shimiji Desktop Pet is something I can do without, but my daughter really likes it, so I'll just dismiss that as I go. So I'm just pointing out there's all sorts of things that you can do to make a Windows XP environment more appealing to your intended audience. Now, with the task of writing, I found that SoftMaker FreeOffice TextMaker is really probably the best one to use in this sort of limited environment. As you saw how quickly it opened up there, and it's got full functionality with DocX, Word doc formats, with PowerPoint and the latest Excel type formats as well. And it works really quickly, and it's free. YWriter is more of a database application that helps. It's written by an author, and it helps with constructing plot lines and characterizations, and that's something else here that I've included but probably won't get used. More to the point, I've got some game type typing tutors which can encourage my daughter to test her writing speed. In general, I've sussed around a few different, I think the best types of game environments that will encourage creative writing are the traditional the interactive fiction types that Infocom was popular for back in the 80s and 90s. There's examples that are freely available. Some are adult titles. I don't think she's going to find those, and I can just disengage those. I can eliminate those before she gets to that point, if she shows any interest in that type of application. RenP is a similar, more modern environment. I've got down here Science Girls. That's a commercialized variety of Ren'Py, but more to the point, there's a lot of freeware. Other people have submitted their, I guess, projects online that you can critique and just see what I think you can get out of that sort of a creative environment. Well, that's all well and good, she says, but will this play Minecraft? And there I've run into a bit of a problem. I know that I can. I've actually installed a Minecraft launcher only about a week ago. We still haven't quite finished the registration process, and I don't know that we're going to get the processing speeds required to get the sort of experience that you might be used to in an i5 or an i7 type computer, but that's what I told her when I gave her this computer. Anyway, I think what I've done though is I've provided a bit of environment that'll help kids, be more of an active rather than a passive contributor to, what sort of things entertain them, and it might actually encourage a bit of creative thinking. All right, I think I'll end it there.